Alright, so now we continue working on permission guard. So we as we saw in last video, we were able to get required permissions from annotation which we created and annotated get users. Now this time what we want is we want to also get roles, all the roles user has. Let's say I'm a user, I have logged in, so all the roles which I have, I want to get that roles list. So before I access the roles here, what I will have to do at the time of login, let's say I'm trying to log in, when I create access token, so at that time uh, here in response user DTO, so let me just go back quickly. In authentication, so first from here it is starting. So first it authenticates, and then it validates users, and then it sets the user in the, I mean, in the request. Alright, and then next what happens is it passes that object here. Okay, so what we will have to do is when it is actually trying to validate the user at the time of local strategy, if I go back in validate user, so when we are getting find user by email, so we'll have to check whether we are getting roles or not here. So first if I go in find user by email, although we are finding user, but it will not return role. So what I can do here, I can put relations, and here in relation I can put the property which you want to populate. So in user entity, if I notice, the property name was roles. So let me just go back again in user service in find user by email, and here we are going to put roles, and what I want to select, so I want to select here in roles, I want to select name equal to true. That's all, not true, just true. Okay, so now it should return roles object inside user, and there will be only name of the role. We are not fetching IDs. Okay, so what we can do next, if I go back in auth controller just by scrolling it up little bit, and if I go back in the flow, let's verify the flow again. So first it will execute a local strategy, will get email and password from authguard, and then it will validate. Now we will have roles here. If you want to verify, what we can do, again, like after validating, it will execute this login endpoint, and this user should have, I mean, roles property, but probably in response user detail we don't have that. So what I'm gonna do, okay, so what I can do, I can just log it here. Let's log it here, user and request.user, and verify whether the user is coming with roles or not. Okay, so if I go in authentication, if I try to log in again, right now the roles is empty, probably because the user doesn't have role. If you see, the ID is 7. If I go back in the database SQLite, and if I refresh, if I go in users, and if I go in user roles, we don't have user with ID 7. it will not allow us to add it in the database since this is free version of this viewer. So what we can do, let's go back here in update for ID 7. I just want to make it admin. So let's make it admin. At later point of time when we will protect this route, so we'll have to the user which is the user who is logged in must be an admin to update roles of any other user. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just send a request and now it is saying unauthorized. I'll quickly comment this out and then I will execute my query. I have this admin role now. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna log in again and now you will see we are getting role name admin. Okay, fine. So now what I can do, if I go back in authorization auth controller.ts, as we saw we are getting all the roles and this is mapped to response user DTO. So what I can do here, we can add one more property, roles, and this could be of type role array. Entity should not be, we should not use entity. Instead we can use DTO, right? So the name of DTO is create user DTO, which we have created. So let's create one more DTO, response response role DTO dot. Although this DTO contains only one property, but we don't want to create any types for role in authorization or in users. So let's copy this in response, and probably we will not need all this validation during response. So we'll keep it as it is, and here we'll name it response role DTO. That's all. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back in user DTO and map it. But ideally what will happen, this is an object with name property, so that's why this is matching. And then let's go back in controller again. I will go in login endpoint, and here now along with user others properties, users other properties will have roles as well. So what we can do, we can just pass roles user dot roles, and then this will be added in access token. And okay, now when we will be executing JWT strategy, when we will be using private annotation here, let's say in user controller, if we use private annotation, if I go in private, we are using JWT auth guard. So JWT auth guard will execute this JWT strategy, and it will execute, it will extract the JWT payload from access token, and then from this payload we can get what we can get all the user details. I mean, whatever we have put in access token. So in access token we had roles as well. So here we can say not payload, we can say roles, and this will be payload dot roles, and we can also define roles on JWT payload. So it will be roles. All right, and this is done. So now what will happen, uh, once it extract payload from access token, it will return this object and attach it to the request. So request dot user will have this as an object, and will also have roles property there. So now what we can do, if I go back in, just scroll it down. I'm trying to do it slowly so that you can catch it up. And here, when we are using private, so we are extracting user from request, we are we are verifying access token, and we are extracting user from payload, and by this time we'll have a user object on request. So in permission guard, what we can do, we can try to verify whether we have what we can say, those rows on user on request. So what I can do, I can just first extract request from the context. So here in context I will use switch to HTTP, since we are using HTTP protocol. So we'll have to use switch to HTTP, and from here I can get request. And now I can log user request dot user and see if this is giving anything or not. So let's try to make a call here. Okay, and now we are also getting user, but we have roles as undefined. So something went wrong somewhere. I mean, while setting the roles, it didn't set properly. Since if I go back in, let me log in again. All right, and then let me try to get users. Okay, now we'll see. And why that happened, the reason behind that, after logged in, I mean login, I updated my role, and that caused like the access token was old. So access token did not have that roles property. So I had to log in to generate a new access token with new payload. Okay, and now this roles property has one role, that is admin. So okay, so now we need to get all the permissions corresponding to this roles. So let's do one thing. In roles permission, in role permission, we can use this, and we can use this property name, and we can fetch all the permissions here. And similarly, let's say we have multiple roles, then what we will have to do, we will have to fetch all the roles for all the, I mean all the permissions for all the roles, and then probably we'll have to find something like unique, or let's say we can just merge it some way, or we can keep it duplicated as well. But usually like we should find unique permissions. I mean text. So this is actually a text, right? So when we will merge multiple roles, we will definitely have duplicates. So we can use JavaScript set, I guess that should give us unique result. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back in permission guard, and let's say I do this way, const user roles, and this time I'm going to use request dot request dot user. If there's an user, then we are going to get roles. Ideally this will happen after authentication, so it should have user, but we are still trying to check. Let's say we don't have request dot user, or let's not add this condition for now. If there's no roles, then probably it will be an undefined. That is fine. And now what will happen here in this case? So in required permissions, what we can do, so we can also verify one thing, whether at this endpoint, if we are not passing anything, we should not restrict any user to go and execute this endpoint, right, in this handler. So we can forward the request to this handler. So let's do step by step. In permission guard, what we can do, if not required permissions, then we can directly return true, right? Else what we can do, we can get user roles, and if there's no user roles, probably we can just, or we can do this way. And then we'll have to find all the permission corresponding to that roles. Const permissions equal to user permissions equal to user role. So we'll have to use role permissions. So I'm going to import this. So how we can compare? So if I see roles permission, this is an object, right? The first thing what we can do, but this is again an array of objects. So ideally I will have to iterate over user roles first, okay, and then we can map it, or we can reduce it. Let's see what we need here. So we can do role, and the type of this role would be just name string, and what we can do next, we can use role permission. So it was role permissions, okay, and here we can pass this name. Name is deprecated, okay. Okay, so this is just a type. We'll have to use this way. Let's do this way. Now it should work. Now once we use this statement, we will have this array object, array, and what we can do, we can just return a list of, so at the end what we will have this way, like p1, p2, and then p3, p4, like this p1, p2 is like view user, update user. So inside one arrow we'll have other arrays, right? So we want to flat it. So instead of map, what we can do, we can use flat map. Okay, and in flat map it will just flat the nested object, I mean nested array. And here if it is not there, then we can just return empty. We can make it single line as well. All right, now if I try to console log it, user permissions, then what you will see here, you will see two arrays. Why this is giving two arrays? Okay, so the second one is the required permissions. So user permissions, and here I will add a text string required permissions. All right, now let's try this out again. Okay, so required permission is view users and user permission is this. So in case, let's say, just to show you, if I would have added something here, let's say view user, then both of this, I mean, will be merged. While fetching the metadata of permissions, these two will be merged and used because of get all and merge, and will get two merged permissions, and some required permissions will be view users and view user, and will also get, okay, so we'll have two permissions here. That's fine, I guess. This case is fine, but I just wanted to show you different case. So this is fine. If the controller requires two permissions, so that is fine. We can again verify it whether it includes here or not. But I just wanted to show you different case. Let's say I'll have to update my role actually. So here in this case, what I can do, I can add one more role member. Let me try to do it again. Unauthorized. For a moment, I will just comment it out. And once we have new roles, let me just log in again. Alright, so I had to pause my video so that I could show you what debugging I was doing. So what happened, so I started the application debug mode in user service, where when we actually in authentication, if I scroll it up, when we use local strategy, if you notice, we use validate user, right? And this validate user is calling find user by email. We use the select, right? But somehow when I use select, it doesn't return all the roles. It just returns the first role item. Um, I'm not sure about what is the actual reason how it works. So probably I will have to explore more on this, how type ORM works. So basically this, there are few issues in type ORM I've noticed, or might be it is intended to work in differently. But currently if I'm trying to select just internal property roles, and or if I probably if I select a parent property, then I select rows, then probably it would be working fine. But right now if I try to select just rows with names, it just returns the first object, so that I don't want. So I just wanted to show you this debugging, and I had to do so. That's why I stopped the video and then restarted this. Okay, and now if I show you hover over it, I'm getting all the rules, but I'm getting all other properties. So for me it is fine. That's okay. If you want to like reduce remove all other properties, we can definitely go ahead and map this out, but it's okay. I mean, it's not super important since this role has just two or three properties. So I'm going to stop this debugging, and I'll do one thing. I'll just remove this statement. I added it just for debugging purpose. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna return it again. All right. And then if I go back in role guard, and if I try to run my server again, okay, so if I try to run my server, yeah, and if I log in again, and then if I try to get all the users, then what is happening here? We are getting two user roles. Also, if you notice, permissions for these two roles are merged. So, and these are repeated as well, like view profile, we are also view profile. We can keep as it is. Uh, just want to verify whether view user exists here and view users exist here. But when we try to compare two array, we'll be using actually loop, right? So two loops. So complexity will be n square. Uh, at that time, what I want is I want to reduce the number of, I mean, iterations. So let's do one thing. First, we'll remove the duplicates from here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna remove this console log, and after this statement in user permissions, let's do one thing. Okay, sure, we can create one more variable, unique user, or we can override as well. If I keep it at let, then user permissions equal to, we have two way to do this. Either we can use load as library with unique, or we can just use JavaScript new shape property. I guess this will do our job. Let me try it out. User permissions, and I need to destructure it here. This will again convert it to array. And if I try to test it, okay, now we are getting uh, only roles which are not duplicate. I mean, we'll not be getting any duplicate roles here if we see. Although since the admin is part of this user, so we will notice like all the roles belong to admins. So just to prove this is combining two user roles, what I can do here, what I can do, okay, I'll go back in user, update, and I'll change it to client, and then I will save it. Again, this is saying unauthorized. So for now, just let me comment it out. Okay, now I'll just uncomment it, and I will try to log in again. Since the data is now bigger, we are getting like bigger access token. Okay, and now if I try to get all the users list, what I was trying to show you. Okay, so now we just have four permissions. The view profile, update profile, view users, and view user. So if I go in role permissions, you will notice the client just have view profile and update profile. So that is also part of member. and view users, and view user is coming from the member itself. So what we did is like we merged, we fetched all the permissions for all the roles the user has access. I mean the user, whatever the roles user has, we fetched all the permission. Then we have removed duplicate permission property from there. We could have kept it same, but we just wanted to have before we proceed for the comparison, we wanted to remove the duplicates. Okay, so this video is going pretty long, so I'm just trying to wrap it up as soon as possible. So next, what I'm gonna do, okay, so now it's time to compare. So we'll have to run a loop. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run a loop on required permission, this one. So we have some methods on array for JavaScript. If you notice, like we can use every, we can use some as well, but some is kind of like it will just verify whether one condition is true, then it will return true. You want to verify all the permission which is in required permission. Let's say view user must exist in this, and view users also must exist in this. So what we will do, we will use user permissions and includes permission. So this user permission must have this permission which is required, and it will verify for all the required permission. And then we can say is, we can create a variable has permission, then this will be true or false. All right, I'm just going to remove this log. I used it temporarily. Okay, we can just return this has permissions, but in case if user has no permission, I mean if it is false, you want to throw new unauthorized error, unauthorized exception. You do not have permission to perform this action. All right. Okay. Now we will verify everything from here, since and I'm going to remove this view user from user controller, since view user is part of this handler only. So before it proceed, like before it proceed for the user controller, it will verify whether it should have access token, proper access token. Okay, in authguard, it is actually verifying the strategy should be able to extract the payload. That's it. And when it will reach, wait, permission guard. Yeah, here in permission guard, then what it will need to do, it will check what the roles user has, and then it will compare the permissions. If if the user has permission, then it will allow it. Now let's debug things from, no, not debug, let's test the thing and then we'll fix it if we have any issue. So I will just try to do one phrase, I mean login, and then I will try to get all the users. I will do one change here in role permission. This client doesn't have view users role, but if I comment this from member as well, you will notice, well, dynamically now what will happen is we should get unauthorized error. So we are getting you do not have permission to perform this action. So you see how cool this is. Like since the user doesn't have permission, we are just actually we have added some rules, and based on the rules, it is verifying the permissions. Okay, we can quickly unblock member to verify to check the users. And now if I try to execute it, I will be able to see all the list. So if I want, what I can do, I can quickly add this guard to each one of them so that I can take advantage of this metadata. But instead of doing this way, what I can do, let's go back and use private. So whenever we'll be using JWT auth guard, we will definitely be using permissions, right? And if that endpoint doesn't require any permission, let's say if I have not used this one, so if there's no required permission, then well and good, it will not stop us from accessing this endpoint. But if there isn't any permission defined, then that should happen after like the private JWT authentication. So instead of, keeping it separate, I'm just going to add one more auth guard here, permission guard. And then what we can do, we can just go back in user controller. Explicitly, we don't need to uh, define, here the guard name, since it is part of this one. So we can verify the same thing again. Let me just check it. It should work. And once if we comment users, you will notice this will stop us from accessing the user. Looks cool. All right. Now if we try to create, update this user, so what will happen? We'll not be able to do that. Earlier we were getting the same thing also, right? When we had private. So that was happening because of the token. Okay, now we'll get you do not have permissions. Same if we try to create new user. Okay, so we don't have a functionality to create, but if we try to delete any user, let's say this, the ID2. So if I try to delete this user, I'll get unauthorized. Okay, this is happening because we have to set with a token. I'll have to save all the requests. So when I close this postman, and at that time it removes the setting. So whenever you do some changes, just save the request. Ah, why it is get? It should be delete. Again, this was not saved, so I'm saving it again. And now I will try to execute. I'm getting you do not have permission to perform this action. So when there will be any admin, and if I am an admin, let's say if I access my profile, let me just get my profile quickly, and I'm actually not an admin. Even in the profile, I want to get the roles details. So let's do one thing. Just go back in auth, auth. Okay. This get profile, get current user profile, and this find user by ID. I want to do same thing. I want to add relations, use roles, then I will be able to get as it is. Now I'm getting the roles.